and welcome back to Wall Tactics. Today we're going to talk about Orks on the brink. So this week, guys, Orks are sitting at about a 34% win rate. So I decided to make a video about some possible changes we would like to see or look forward to when the time comes and GW decides to give us that sort of attention. So these are going to be things that are pretty much equally known as consensuses for the community as some of Ork's weaknesses, but also some things that I think should be pointed out that maybe for the newer players could understand, people that are trying to, get stuck in and not really know what's going on with the Orks, and they keep hearing all these bad things but don't really understand. We can give some context to maybe the greater community as a whole and to, experience gets as well. It's important that people know that we understand the rules around here. We understand that we're not just going to come around here and complain and be upset that things are not going the way of the Orks right now. But these are just to, help encourage people, raise awareness, give hope, and encourage those who are struggling and maybe just have interest in the struggle of others, right? So before we get into that, we want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Baron of Dice. They have great dice. They've done some dice for us that we'll be putting up online. We have a 5% discount in the description because nobody likes taxes. So before you get stuck in, be sure to get a few of those. They have a great matte finish. So boys, today we're going to talk about possible Ork revision / wish list. So these are going to be some points of interest that I personally want to talk about. And some of this is going to be a little quirky, right? Just like, man, I hope Orks get more AP, right? And some of this is going to be just direct points of contention and observations that we have made over the 6 weeks since Nexus has been out. So of course it's not complaining. This is meant to be for constructive criticism and for just letting people know that we're on the same page. So if you disagree with me, of course, be heard in the comments near the end of the video. I'll look at whatever is being said in the live chat as well and respond to everything in there too. So be sure to comment after the video to the rewatch gang and to those who are watching live, because there's an open conversation. Things I say are not absolute. They are just a consensus of the war bosses as a whole. So things to consider first as we move into this conversation, right? Orks are sitting at a 34% win rate 6 weeks into Nexus. So the question is, how does Nexus play for Orks as to what are the things that we're observing here? So one thing is that, sorry, the pace of the game has changed, right, as to how things are going with the game. Orcs can't really rely on scoring the way they usually do for several editions, where score early, die late, right? As into you are trading points and bodies for the missions, right? That's something that you can't rely on anymore because of something called secret missions. Now, secret missions are overall pretty beloved in the game for most factions and most people as a whole. It gives another layer of strategy and diversity. There's a reason to play up to turn 5. So as a whole, I'm not against secret missions as for what they are for Nexus, but looking at them through strictly Ork lens, which is the point of this channel around here, secret missions are more of a detriment to an Orks than a favor. As we play for our data sheet and for our lore accurate understanding of how Orks want to, conduct themselves on the battlefield, is we throw ourselves into the meat grinder. Typically we're either you're dead because you're a soft army and we beat you up, or B, we are pretty much dead and we scored a bunch of points and denied you points. Secret missions is a direct counter to that. Therefore, Nexus itself is somewhat of a direct counter to that as well. The point differentials are a bit harder to get done as well. So that's going to be a bit of a struggle. Yet at the same time, the overall, in 40k, which is pressure melee, is actually how Nexus is favored to be played as a whole. So other factions that are pressure orientated, melee, close combat, get stuck in, they're still doing well as Nexus as a whole. So Orks favor from that, right? We gain the benefit from that, which is why some people can do very well. Our peak potential and our ceiling is very high. But on the other side of that, we have the worst, we'll say data sheet per point, some of the weaker abilities, and different detachments and restrictions that other armies and factions don't have to deal with, to put us on the weaker end and actually make us able to, drop lower and do much worse than you would consider. Another question here to consider is the meta is diverse. Do Orks play well into the meta if it's diverse? Why or why not? And the question to that is yes and no. The answer is a bit gray, as they do have the tools for a variety of matchups. We do have stuff to punch out really tough guys with their devastating wounds and our variety of punches, Gazguas and lethal. We have the ability to put Daka down range and high damage with Death Dreads and big shells. With Dread Mob and big shells for bigger gets. We have the ability to pressure and turn one charge you, commandos to ignore Overwatch. Yet the issue is that Orks play a premium for our tools. So for anything that doesn't look like pretty much a straight up boy or knob data sheet, Orks end up paying out the back end for them. One example of those is what I said: commandos, Death Dreads, killer cans, mega knives now. Most things we'll see Gorgonauts, walkers, most things that aren't, we'll just say, looking like a basic boy or knob data sheet end up taking a premium cost, especially if they have any kind of utility, tools. Therefore, Orks can have some tools for a couple different, can have a diverse toolkit, yet we can get overwhelmed and kind of just straight up destroyed by skew list, as we can't have a lot of the same kind of tools. And even if we do, let's say we can easily kill a baby knight or even a knight as a whole with a beast boss and beast snagger boy unit. One brigand is cheaper than a beast snagger boy unit with the beast boss and a truck. Right, you're paying for that entire combo to get the result to kill something that's relatively not that hard to kill, or not that expensive, for most of the armies. I mean, that can go for Tyranid monsters as well. And you have to consider the CP factor you're going to put into killing that. So the trades in that way aren't doing that well. And that's one tool that's good for this, yet not good for 2-up power armor armies, reactionary move armies, things like that. So we're paying a premium for all these different tools. And we struggle into some of those different diverse archetypal lists. We'll say anything that has reduced damage sucks for us. Armor of Contempt sucks for us. Deep Strike of 3 inches, can suck for us because, like we said earlier, secret missions. A lot of armies reactionary move, get back and transport kind of ability sucks for us, especially if you're a newer casual player. Orks very much reflect your skill and ceiling potential, and sometimes your skill and ceiling potential are directly reflected on the experience you have in those matchups and how confusing and complicated other people's armies are, and how direct and, we'll say, fair, quote unquote, Ork rules sometimes can seem, right? So people are doing crazy stuff that you can't even consider, and you're still having to deal with that. That can be very disheartening and hard for newer players to react to, right? So consensus that Orks were nerfed too hard. Now, there's a consensus along the whole community as a whole, even when the rules just, when Nexus popped out and the changes happened, that they were hit too hard. Why is this the consensus? And this can pretty much be reported to the fact that the majority of competitive players not only abandon it, but even faction specialists go out and reportedly come back reporting the same weaknesses, having very similar outcomes and struggles, as well as to the numbers to just telling us, 6 weeks in, that we're pretty much taking all the L's and slowly dropping down more and more as people are kind of filling themselves out as to what they're doing good at. I like to think that the meta is in a good place as a whole, yet Orks just lack and pray for a premium for that, which makes it harder for that. As well as, the numbers are pretty much reflecting that every detachment is struggling. We'll talk about some detachment rules that we can hope to see if possibly changed, though I think points will be coming first before anything, if GW does decide to make any changes is all to help us out, right? Because they want to make incremental changes that aren't too devastating to the game. So the detachments could use some attention. That's what I put right there, as to Orks are falling behind because we lack on not only quality, but we lack on quantity, as in we kind of end up paying for a lot of stuff, and we sometimes get outbodied or out united by even power armored armies, right? Sisters of Battle, for example, can have more units on the battlefield, so that kind of sucks for us, and it puts us in a weird place because we're known as a trash bash army, and we're known as a non-elite, dying on the battlefield type of army, and none of these ways are the way that you really want to go into Nexus, and doesn't really help you in that way. So what are some things we can look at when we go into this, right? So we're going to look at some units that I think could take some point changes, even if they're just minor, and then we'll talk about the detachment rules, and then we'll sum this thing up with the chat. Because we don't want to make this too long, because it's still kind of early, guys. There's still a long way in the season for things to hammer out still, which we'll talk about too. So units that are points of interest for points of changes, right? So units that pretty much could be considered for point changes if you're not looking to go into direct rule changes. Because one thing I said, and you guys should consider as a whole, is orcs lack diversity in tools and assets. Some of those are AP, multiple points of damage, and shooting, right? Those are some things that we really suck at. Not only that, but we suck at kind of standing on objectives for the most part. Not that we always need it, but that is a factor too. So when we're looking at these point changes and what units we want to change them and why, you should consider why they're an asset to us and why they're needed for reduction and how important of a role and how vital they can be. Because some of them are the only ones that can do it, and that's without changing any rules, right? So this we're going into this just straight up rules, straight up points. If GW in the future changes point rules and points, that's a whole different conversation. We're not covering that in that context. So here, Commando starting right out, right? Everybody can understand and know the value of an infiltrator. Yet orcs are paying 135 points. It is the only infiltrator option on our data sheet. You're paying out the nose for a premium for 10 boys. That don't have too much combat potential, have very unreliable shooting potential, and have a situational data sheet ability. Of course, they have a bunch of different rules that are stacking on that. That nonetheless being said, commandos need to come down about 10 points. Orcs being able to position themselves a little bit earlier in the mid table or in positions in the corners of the table so that they're not getting flanked on or reserved on or deep striked on, as orcs actually hate when you get behind us, for example, right? We want to have our momentum going forward. So if you can stick commando somewhere, that really helps us, and them dropping down in points can help us for positioning in the battlefield, maybe lasting longer in the game. Killicans, and we'll put Death Treads in there too, are 2 walker data sheets. That means they're very specific to Dread Mob when they're gaining any buffs. If they go in any of the detachments, the only one that's interesting would be Warhorde. That being said, the Death Dreads and Killicans simply struggle to. They are too expensive for what they are. Killicans are way too slow. One thing I would like to say is, even though it's not a detachment change, a rule change everybody would love to see is if the Big Mech, the new Big Mech from GW just released, could go with the Killicans as a data sheet ability and allow the Killicans to move through terrain. That would be amazing. That would significantly help Killican. So if you didn't want to change your points, at least change that. But that being said, if you do not change that, Killicans need to come down to, I'd even say 105 points. They've been there before. It didn't affect the meta nearly anywhere. In regards to that, there's a lot of things that can counter them where they're at. Killicans need to come down significantly. It would help Dreadmob have a place to stay and make a little bit of a splash. It helps us with our lack of AP. They actually have AP -2, and they have flat damage 3, which is something we lack there as well. That's something that can significantly throw us back right away, back into contention. Death Dreads in the same boat. Even if you take them with Flamers, they give you a very, very valuable skirmish type of unit. If Death Dreads as well can come down in points, I would like to see Death Dreads come down to 115, we'll say. I still find that reasonable. Their data sheet ability too is, of course, very circumstantial. Their toughness is very, whiffy, very crappy, to be honest. I really hate their toughness. If W's not looking to change it to T10, then they need to put the points down to at least 115, if not 105 as well. Even their melee is unreliable, as hitting on 3s with even 7 attacks is not something that you can rely on. AP -2 just isn't that amazing anymore. And we just have enough of that in the game. We really need to see -3 AP, maybe Death Dreads or something that can pick that up. Beast Snagga Poise, I put boys on there. I switched hogs and boys right there. That's my own typo. Messed me up. Sorry, guys. Chop my head off. I meant to put Beast Snagga Boys there. 105 points right now. I think Beast Snagga Boys can come down to 100, even possibly 95. Just because for the most part, even if you are bringing them solo, they're still just boy bodies with the 5-up armor and a 6-up. Feel no pain. I think they need to be better for skirmishing. Orcs need something else that's not always everything over 100 points or 3 digits for every single unit of, we'll call it chaff killing or chaff killers. And it would help us a little bit reduce our killing and monster potential as it brings down that beast boss combo. Squig Hog Boys, which are 160 right now. Squig Hog Boys simply don't hit nearly as well as they used to be. I'm telling you, not hitting on 2s is significantly different than hitting on 2s, which is something they lost, as now they simply hit on 3s and their mounts hit on 4s. Everything in the game is sitting at Armor of Contempt. There's a bunch of 2-up armor saves in the game. It's simply not. Squig Hog Boys also have to take at least a 1-inch pivot thing. That's not a huge factor, but it's something I should consider. A lot of things in the game are built to kill 3 wound models. Squig Hog Boys not having an invuln means that simply when they're not on the wall turn, Squig Hog boys get picked up, eaten up right off the table, left and right, easily move blocked and outmaneuvered. They need to be able to stand in the open sometimes for just one turn and take the damage. That being said, for 160 points, they're not soaking enough damage, and they're not reliably killing their favorite targets. If their favorite targets are big monsters and big vehicles, the fact that they have AP -1 is a huge detriment to that. If that doesn't ever change from a data sheet wise, then their points simply need to come back down. That way they can at least either punch up when they do get lucky trades in, or just take big chunks out of these, very expensive monster units and vehicle units. And even if they die, they were cheaper, significantly cheaper than whatever they were trying to kill, and it ended up not being bad. For example, SNID Tyranid monsters across the board are significantly cheaper than a unit of Squighog boys, and it's very unlikely that a Squighog boy unit can go in there and just straight up kill them. So Squighog boy units need to come down for sure. Burner boys are certainly sitting at 60 points. I'd love to see them at the also 50-point range. Their data sheet ability could be cool, but the fact that you have to be within 6 inches to get their data sheet ability, and they have to be on their objective to get the full rear rolls, means burner boys still aren't where they're at. And their melee hits on 4s. That's really freaking annoying because they have AP -2, which is cool. Their burners are only strength 4 as well, so that super sucks. If they can get up to strength 5 and -1, that could be interesting. But in reality, getting down to 50 points where they need to be. Gork and Mork, I think, need to come down points, whatever that may be. I would say Mork can come down to 280, and Gork can just come down maybe 5 or 10. The whole point here is that because they have pretty much very whiffy shooting, for the most part, right? For the most part, unless you want to throw a bunch of CP in them. Very whiffy shooting for the most part, lack of pretty much good armor saves, just like any other Titan, yet don't have the same strat support. Means that Gork and Mork are really just trying to go on the wall turn, as that's their data sheet ability. They just need to come down to some significant point level where they can die more. They're way too easy to be killed and traded out, and they move quite significantly slow. If you're not going to make them come down a good amount of points, then they need to be able to jump through terrain just like the Titanic models could, and even then they wouldn't be that great. So Mega Knobs for having a 5-up feel no pain now for 40 points is not okay. Just where it's at, guys. I'm sorry, I'm not even going to be nice and say it needs to come down 5 points. Go Meganauts need to come down to the 30 point per model where they used to be at with that 5-up feel no pain. I'm not saying this just for the sake of bully boys. I'm saying this for the sake of Mega Knobs actually play a significant role in Orks. They actually kill a lot of tough models for us. They can actually stand on the objectives in the open for us, and they give us that actual armor save unit that we very, very much lack. So Mega Knobs as a whole play a direct role for Orks that we very much need between AP -3 and high strength. That directly helps us in some of our matchups and weaknesses that we really have just by changing that one unit. It's not even that we really care for the 4-up feel no pain. Just let the 5-up feel no pain exist, and 30 points per model be good. Now we have tank busters. Tank busters are 110 points. That is absolutely outrageous. They are trash because they do not make sense, and the strength of their weapons aren't even that good. Their data sheet ability of +1 isn't even good enough, in my opinion. It would have to be something like +1 and re-roll hits and wounds, or something like Eradicators for me to be even that interested. The fact that the pistol guy's in there just throws it all off out of whack, and there's the hammer guy in there. Pretty much where they're at. If GW is going to stick to that model, they need to make that kit about 65 points for those 5 dudes, and they need to be able to combine 2 5-man units into a 10-man unit, and allow it to at least maybe enjoy a strat ability or something, and also change its squig bombs, because the squig bombs have to be done one after another. And unlike, both at the same time, you need to be able to just throw both your squigs right when they get out of the truck or whatever they may do. So tank busters are freaking horrible, and they need to be fixed, or GW needs to give us something to combat that, which is great melee that's good into high toughness models, or make all the custom boost mega blasters strength 10, for example. We'll talk about in a little bit. So we have the Stampa plus mech, because you're always paying for the mech tax, which is 45 points as well. I'm not going to be one of those people that says the Stampa should have come down to 600 points. People bring 3 of them, whatever it may be, but it should come down to at least 700 points, in my opinion, maybe even 650, because you are paying for the mech tax every single time. Now, and just so you guys guys know, Stomper can really be played. It's just a matchup thing. Now, a couple characters, because not too many characters need to be changed, but hey, here's a couple of characters I'm going to say. I think the Pain Boy for 180 is just outrageous. This would not only benefit Green Tide, or we'll say Bully Tide, for example, sometimes when you want to use the Pain Boy, but for 3 wounds and 80-point model is just crazy. He can easily be precisioned out. People not, taking the time to play around that and getting, any kind of mindset of I can just kill this stupid 3-wound model is not our fault as Orc players. We shouldn't have to play as outrageous premium for a 3-wound model just because he gives a 5 of Feel No Pain and one-time D3 models back. Okay, I think that's just way too much. Went overboard. He needs to come back down to 70 points. I actually thought he was even a little bit too much at 70 points. And we do need Green Tide to get a little bit better and a little bit of a buff. Therefore, it helps both of those things. Bully Boys, Green Tide, and Warhorde. So Pain Boy needs to come down. So Big Mech in Mega Armor, 100 points. Even with the Mega Noms coming down to 30 points, I still want to see the Big Mech and Mega Armor come down. Why? That's because his 4-up invuln is very often not coming into play. A lot of the time, you're going to have cover, and people are going to have -2, -3 AP. You're still going to get a 4-up armor save. Of course, there's meltas. Of course, there's ignore cover bonuses, things like that. But for the most part, how the game works when you've got big expensive units, they're getting traded out like nuclear warheads. Therefore, the Big Mech's also ability of regenning people isn't reliably to happen, right? And there's other abilities that you could change to make him more valuable, but all in all, I think he should come down in points. For the most part, things just get killed, right? Now, we have Mazrog Scragbag. Mazrog Scragbag took a hit on his rules. He's simply just not where I need him to be, killing-wise or durability-wise. He's in a weird spot. HEW, you need to get him a way to get AP -2 other than the hunt. He needs AP -2. It's just a dang shame that he's AP -1 on himself. That being said, Mazrog could come down about 10 points. It would help with the hunts as well, in my opinion, and Bully Boys, as he's kind of a factor there in both of those. So Squighog Boys coming down to like 130, Miles coming down to like 150, hopefully, so maybe 15 points. These units will become way more interesting to Orc players, and even then, they won't take over the meta because Squighog Boys simply do not punch how they used to, guys. They really don't, and the meta is more killy than it used to be in a lot of ways against 3-wound models. Last but certainly not least, we have the Big Mech, the boy that I want to be the leader of Killer Cans. He needs to come down because his data sheet ability is very, very niche, and the detachments that actually want him are actually quite niche. He pretty much just wants to be in maybe Warhorde so he can get movement bonuses and Dread Mob, right? He's too exclusive for for detachments, and he needs to be played out with a bit more. His offensive profiles are all over the place. All in all, he needs to go with Killer Cans. That's the real change that I really want to see on him, more than even points. That being said, let's look at some detachment changes before we go into that, and then I'll take a look at chat. So we have Bully Boys for these detachment rule changes, guys. I'm just going to throw a couple out there to get the conversation started. Of course, you in the comments or chats get back at me, and then we'll talk about that, right? But last but not least, what we're going to say here is Bully Boys, right off the bat, one big thing I want to see is War Boss keywords need to be accessed for strats, right? I'm just saying it right now. I need to be able to do it. Maybe not every single one, right? Maybe you don't need to let all my boys run up and roll D6 to get mortal wounds on something for assured mortal wounds. Okay, I understand. Okay, but I do need to at least be able to get re-roll hits. Maybe can we see something here? I mean, for the most part, the Bully Boys, and not just Bully Boys, but as the detachment as a whole, I really should have started with this. The detachments as a whole are too restrictive per data sheets and keywords. As a whole, all of these could benefit from a bit of tweaking and reworking on keywords alone, which could be a video in itself. We're not going to go all the way into that, but that's something to be thought and kept in mind as you look at all these detachments and how they can be changed. They very much are so restrictive that you can pretty much look at a data sheet and say, this is going to this detachment. It is what it is. Boom. If that's going to be the case, it needs to be thought of that's the case and pointed associated that's the case and remain that way the whole time. Not go up and down where you just don't care GW and then you nerf them into the ground because one detachment is good with them and you forgot. All right, so Bully Boys, they should have the War Boss keyword for the strats. Also, in my opinion, humble opinion, Flash Gits should get the knobs keyword. I would love if Flash Gits got the knob keyword. The fact that pretty much no detachment gives them the knob keyword, I mean, sorry, that gives them no like detachment bonuses besides Warhorde, obviously, but nothing that feels good for just them and unique to them. Is pretty boring. And I'd really love to see Flash kids get that. I don't think it's too much of an increase. They should benefit from that. Now we have the Hunt. Okay, there's a lot of different things I've heard of for the Hunt. I'm going to put mine out there for what I think is an easy change on them to make them better. Uh, Allowing units with leaders to be targeted, right? So not just monsters or vehicles. It should be monsters, vehicles, or units with the leader, all right, or a character, for example. So character keyword in them. That would actually make the hunt a lot more interesting, as you can either hunt down individual characters that are trying to run around by themselves, even if they're not a monster, right? Or you could run around and kill these very, very durable lead units and throttle into them with the strat bonuses and fight them on the non-WAAAGH turns if these leader units. That way, even outside of the WAAAGH, your the hunt army can still have benefits from going after these, durable leader, character units. So people have said maybe pick 2 different units. I don't think that's good enough, and it gets more complicated. I think their strats are already pretty good, and they're very similar to Warhorde. Therefore, just change it to I can choose more targets. That way, people can't restrict me, right? And the way that you choose more targets is character keyword. Boom, I go after guys to be targeted as well. So then we have Dread Mob. So I think Dread Mob is actually pretty sick, have pretty sick strats. I really think it's data sheet weaknesses here, more than anything, I think. And the fact that, of course, they killed our our grot tanks and killed our Forge World stuff. So we lost a bit of variety here, right? If we got some kind of strat like Soul Forge Demon engines did, where we can just randomly make something else dread mob like a battle wagon, sure, that'd be cool. But all in all, it's really cool how it is. The only changes I'd really care to see for detachment rules on dread mob, besides like data sheet abilities and points, would be enhancements on press it fasta could be changed. I think it should be that I could choose 2 if I pay for it at 35 points or something and take a hazardous keyword as trait, right? That would make it awesome because 35 points. Or he needs to come down in points. He needs to come down and, like 10, 15 points for press it twice, because you can get the same ability twice and that would suck and feel pretty much useless. So I don't want to pay much points for that. And then also, I want to see somehow we get access to strength 10 or greater custom mega blasters or AP -3 custom mega blasters. I think us just lacking that, and the smash a gun stuff like that was just unnecessary. I'm throwing it in here just to be changed, but I'd love if that somehow got changed. Next is Green Tide. I think this could use a couple reverts, not all of them. So one of them is I think it should revert to 5-up invul. I don't think it should be 6-up invul. And sometimes when the unit is diminished, should remain a 5-up invul. Should revert, go get them to possibly 6 inches. I think it should be able to still move a max of 6 auto inches into someone to get into combat for that unit. I don't think it's too OP, especially if it's for a unit that's still greater than 10. It makes the strat very interesting. I don't think you need to re-roll saving throws of 1. If anything, that takes more time into the game for actual gameplay. So I don't really care for that to add that bad mechanism back in. But all in all, I think Green Tide benefits more from other support units becoming better and cheaper and allowing them to help Green Tide and work within them, right? For example, Mega Knobs being an interesting change to cheaper means they can act as a bulwark again. They can act as the anti-tank again. Gas can come in there again as a cheaper point cost and act as a big punching unit into big tough stuff that is running through your hordes, for example. It just opened up options as a whole. Maybe you can bring commandos if they come down 15 points. All in all, Green Tide could get benefits from other people taking point changes and other data sheets and them getting a little bit more durability back and a little bit more strat bonus back. They don't need everything back, just a little bit here and there and a little bit of support from other data sheets. Not even with the detachment. I mean, just other data sheets being decent. Last, but certainly not least, will be Cult of Speed. This might surprise some of you guys, but it's one of the easier things I've thought about in my head that makes sense. Is we all understand that GW is simply scared of Cult of Speed because of what you gits did with freebooters in 9th edition. I was one of those kids. So GW doesn't want us to shoot everybody off the table. Therefore, they made sure that we're not able to shoot. And that being said, I think Cult of Speed should get some sort of melee buff to buggies as a constant rule. That means they need to constantly have something like always +1 to hit, always additional +1 AP and melee. And also I think just straight up, buggies can use a data sheet rework. just figure out what their data sheet abilities want to do. Either you want to make them durable or do you want to make them somewhat more killy. The fact that they're weirdly like trying to debuff you and they don't really hurt you and they don't really do anything is kind of silly. So buggies could use a rework as data sheets per hole. So if they want to look at that, that'd be sick. But if you're not willing to look at that, look at cult to speed. Look at the fact that they really struggle to really kill anything. And if you're not going to allow them to kill anything in combat, then at least make it that they're constantly at least able to, when they shoot and charge, right, which is what they want to feel like they're doing, combined arms, that the second half of that combined arms is a little bit more reliable. So getting a little bit more hitting on threes, we'll say, and then also maybe additional AP would help them as well in combat too. They're just in a weird spot where I'm just saying, point change decreases wouldn't be enough. Then you're just going for a point stat check. It becomes weird. The fact that the Cult of Speed struggles to kill one Land Raider when it pops his defensive abilities is kind of obnoxious. So all in all, Cult of Speed isn't horrible, but these are the things that you need to kind of look at and consider if GW wants to change them and make them playable. Funny enough, and then of course, the true last but certainly not least data sheet is Warhorde. The main thing that Warhorde needs to change is the Gargantuan Squiggoth needs to use hard as nails again. And bam, I said it. I don't care what none of y'all say. You can argue with me all you want. What's up? Fight me. I think Gargantuan Squiggoth should get hard as nails, dude. It's really, really fun. It's not OP, and there's a lot more silly things out there on the table as that. So that being said, those are some of the changes I can think. Leave any in the comments if you have anything to disagree with me. So Orks, wish list, and revisions. These are some of the changes and observations I've made. And of course, right now I'm going to take a quick couple minutes to look at the chats, and then we'll pop out of here. So we have a few Wall Tactic gifted memberships from Wicked Joe. Whoa! For Wicked Joe, I hope you're getting stuck in at that G2. I appreciate you. Of course, you guys check that out. We use the emojis and everything that we can do, and it helps us with our raffles. Thank you, Aaron. Whoa! Thank you for those looters you get. I got that Docker walk coming. So thank you guys for the Wall Tactics memberships. Those are very generous of you. It means a lot. It takes a lot of work behind all this and what we try to do and consistently doing. So all of the any generosity goes directly back to the community and back to the channel and what we're doing around here. Aaron says, preach it, Eddie, preach it. I've been saying that. I don't know what you're saying, but for sure, I'm sure we agreed. Yeah. Then we have, Aaron again. For 10 Canadian dollars. Whoa, let's go, Aaron. He says, for 30 points, Mega Knob and Warhorde changes. Love my Gargantuan Squiggoth. I'd give more, but yeah, I didn't mention Lord of Deceit, Snickra. Yeah, no, Snickra, I think he's okay. I don't think he needs to come down points necessarily. I'd like it, but he doesn't need to. And yeah, I agree. Mega Knobs come down. Warhorde doesn't need a bunch of changes, just a little tiny bit, but thank you very much. Generous of you. Let me see what some of y'all other gets got to say real quick, because I know the chat was going pretty hard around here. So if I don't see what you guys say, don't hate me. But it seems like a lot of people are agreeing on one is that Mega Knob should come down to 30 points. Of course, we're biased because we're an Orc chat around here. Two, Orcs need more AP, which is a consensus. Of course, somebody says, didn't the pain boss get an increase? Dude, you're a troll. Another guy, Michael Myers, says, give Beast Snaggle Boys 6-up invuln that they used to have. The pain boss actually does something and makes sense. Okay, I get why you're saying that, because instead of giving a 6-up feel no pain to have a 6-up invuln, that way the pain boss makes sense. Okay, cool. That is something that could be cool. As a whole, they need to make infantry more interesting for Snaggas. That way the hunt is still kind of interesting, right? Questions from Wicked Joe. Has any model from Legends returned to the game? Could Backrook come back from 11th edition? Not off the top of my head that I really know. I think maybe some guard character might have. Could Backrook come back? I think so, just because he's been in books and stuff. Hopefully. So I think hopefully. What's not coming back? The Grot Tanks. Yeah, for James Keller, he says, for Green Tide, they needed to nerf either the strats or the detachment rule, not both. And the reason they don't need to do both is because Nexus itself, between the double secondaries of Assassinate and Call the Horde really going to us really easily, and the pace of the game going to us. There's a bunch of factors that already were hurting us. They didn't need to go double nerf bat on us. They just got a little bit scared. And yeah, Commandos are totally overcosted. Knobs should be 15 points. You mean down 15 points? Let's see what as someone who won major event, I agree Orcs need some love. Sorry. As someone who won a major a major event. I agree. Orcs need some love. I feel the hit to Mega Knobs was heavy-handed. Lower the cost to 35 points would be great. The hunt should be able to pray anything. So not even just with character. You don't even agree with me. You think anything. So if you agree with that, let me know. And as for what you guys got to say, so for the most part, most of you guys agree with me what we've been saying. Orcs a little bit too expensive where they need to be. I think, oh, this is an interesting one. Units of Death Treads could go to 2 units instead. Even if they don't, I would love if they had that. John's kicking it back to what it used to be. So it used to be Death Treads could be 3-man units, and then we need to deploy them, and then they break into individual units. That'd be absolutely sick, and I would love that. So boom, I would love that. And yeah, Orcs, Hogs ignore modifiers. Yes, sir. Burner boys need a leader option. Stompas need to be 600. No, those Stompas will not be sub 600. And a Morkanot is a great rapid ingress target. You guys are funny. Tank buses are trash, but I have 3 units. Yes, sir. Heck yeah, this dude's someone who's been watching Critical F Pain. Exactly, plus 20 points. That's what GW did last time. They did critical keywords, everything pain go up. And someone also said 5-man units for for commandos would be sick. I actually agree with that. That was smart. 5-man units of commandos would be sick. Dread mobs just need to give another bonus to Walker and movement. So yeah, other than that, wait, Mega Knobs can go down 5 points as well, dude. No way Gork and Mork should Mega Knobs should cost more than Space Marine Terminators. Yeah, even 5 points, but I'm just saying I think 10. Hate you, GW. Hate you. No, don't hate GW. John Otto says burners are okay. Just need mech being able to be attached. I think they're okay, but 6 inches, dude, to be able to get within 6 inches and have the ability to grow off, bro. The whole point is I want my flamers to hit stuff that's barely outside of 12 anyways, because for the most part, things that I'm trying to hit with flamers are things that are reactionary, moving, and annoying. So I don't want to get within 6 of you. I want to be able to flame you from 12 or even 18 inches away if possible. But I get what you're saying. So that being said, guys, thank you for everything. I appreciate y'all. Of course, these are just hopes and ideas. Just so everybody understands that Orcs are struggling across the table. Of course, some of you guys at your local GameStop are having a great time. I appreciate that. That's really good because Orcs are a reflection of your skill as a whole and, just how you guys play. So keep having fun. Don't get discouraged. But if you are having a hard time, just know that it's pretty much happening across the table and that Orcs are just in a weird place. GW has shown the flexibility to go back and change things. Therefore, you should stay encouraged. Keep playing the way you want to play. Stick to the fundamentals. Worry about your pylons, consolidates, CP management, everything like that in your combos. And the meta as a whole will swing back our way. Of course, there will always be the rise of the green tide. So with that being said, there's always one thing to keep in mind is don't cross our wall because we not get teeth out. Whoa.